And we are live here. So, now we are. This our third Google Hangout?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm pretty excited about this one. I really enjoyed the readings. So to start us off, I guess we talk a little bit about fostering creativity and innovation through technology. Um, so start with the first question here. When we're and I guess just It's our first step is to consider the following quote. Digital design is neither learning about technology nor learning with technology, but learning creativity and innovation through technology. What is the difference between learning through technology versus learning with technology, do you think? Do you think, excuse me?
Um, I think that learning through technology means that technology is more of like the forefront here. So you couldn't, through their understanding and their beliefs, that you couldn't really get that creativity and innovation and those skills that they wanted you to get out of something where you were just using technology as like an assist or like just helping with that technology. So I feel like there's more of a deeper connection where you're using the technology to get the experiences from that directly instead of just saying, we're going to use computers with this. Like that was the main existence of building that, is
Hmm.
what I think that means.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. When I first read that, uh, before I kind of went through all the questions, kind of, and before I read the article, and like reading that, I thought that like it would be a lot simpler, kind of explain, and then I found myself really thinking about like what does that mean really, and uh, and I think you're spot on when you said it's like actually really implementing the technology as like I guess something you're learning. I guess I'm trying to avoid the words like with and through, but like
Yeah, it's hard to.
yeah. So I a great example was just like I guess just jumping around into that second article, like something they do. People are like getting to express themselves through this different like program, and that's kind of like through technology, instead of it being like yeah, like a secondary or kind of I guess that's just confusing to explain. And I
it
think
makes it makes sense in your head. It's harder to put into words, but you
yeah,
understand it. It's one of
yeah.
those deals.
And I think you did a great job there. So I'm just gonna kind of move on from that.
I thought about it for a while.
Yeah, and I feel like exactly. Like I feel like I know what I'm talking about, but every time I try to say it or write it down, it doesn't really make sense. But
It's like trying to say a definition without using the actual word. It's one of
yeah,
those.
So
Yeah.
what is the difference between learning through technology versus learning with technology? I think through technology, right, is you're learning with exactly that. When you're learning through technology, you're actually learning with technology. Um, when you're learning with technology, it's you're like you're learning as like a program is like you're almost like learning how to use it. I don't very confusing, but I'm just like losing myself trying to like explain it. But again, I think you did a hell of a
Just
job there.
like more of the more of the experience is coming from directly that technology where like before you could still learn those skills, but like it wouldn't be like, okay, I need, this digital design class to teach me this. Whereas before you could probably learn it and, not necessarily have to use that technology every day, but it still help you. But
Mhm.
it wouldn't be like as vital to, building those skills, I guess.
Yeah,
Something along those lines.
yeah, and I'm like thinking, I'm trying to like think of an example, like kind of like when I was in elementary school, we used to like have like once a week we'd go to the computer lab and like learn how to like use the internet and like kind of type and different things like that, and I feel like now it's changed where you're actually using technology to learn about different things that you are normally
Yeah,
learning about.
exactly.
Yeah, okay, and we're moving on here. Okay, next is just to discuss the following statement of many of these concepts may seem a little too advanced for elementary school, but these kids are soaking it in. And that was mentioned. That's a quote directly from the first article. And what do you think about that there? Um,
I think this means that like well, it's pretty interesting because the digital design class, like they got to use like vector graphics, 3D design, computer programming, which
mhm.
as a math major I had to take like the lower level computer science, and that was challenging enough for me. But I think it's to the point where like although the concepts are really challenging and obviously it can become so complex that it's challenging for us to handle at our age and our level of ability. But I think that it was saying that these students are being able to apply and understand enough of what they need to so that they can like create their own video games and like design this and
Mhm.
create certain things. So I think one of the things is they're so engaged by it that they're sort of kind of pushing themselves to understand it more because they want to.
Yeah, and I think that's the big point where they're enjoying what they're doing. They're like, oh, we get to use computers and do all these different program stuffs. So they're like almost tricking themselves, saying like, oh, this is important to learn because then I won't be able to play on the computer. You know, if I
Yeah,
can't do this, then I don't get to have fun. Um,
it's a win-win because they're learning the skills that they need, but at the same time they're enjoying what they're doing, which is really what education should be about the whole time. It just doesn't always seem to end up that way.
Exactly, and it's often to hear like I just feel like you don't see that phrase of like these kids are soaking it in, like when in terms of like elementary school anything or elementary ed, it always like you hear a story about something and it's always a struggle or it's tough to get some kind of point across or it's tough to get them to do something. But to hear that it was kind of cool that like yeah kids are soaking it in because they love to think that they're not getting controlled like they can use the computers and it's always fun looking at a screen and typing and designing different things like that. So very
Yeah,
cool
I
concept. Go ahead.
think that um, like the whole soaking it in thing is that they really like take up the challenge. So although it's really hard and some of it's confusing and way over their heads and like, at that age they're just not gonna be able to process it all. I think that because they enjoy it so much, they're like, okay, I'm gonna take this challenge and I'm gonna figure this out because it's sort of kind of like a game to them. So like for me, if I have a game and this is my goal and this is what I want to accomplish, it's more fun for me to figure it out. So I think
Yeah.
there's sort of kind of that mindset too of it.
Yeah, and then I guess like that leads right into what does this actually say about assumptions teachers have about elementary students? Um, I would say like they don't really have the um, like their expectations are almost pretty low at first, and then that like statement rings a bell in my head that like wow teachers are like pumped up because it's again very difficult for them to soak in anything you know or students I mean soak in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that
Does that make sense?
like the teachers assume that okay, they're at this age level, that's way over their head. Why would I even try it, sort of kind of thing. And I think that's the problem, like you said. Like most of us, we look at the negative thing. So okay, my students aren't being able to reach at this level. Well, some of the times, obviously, you can have some students that aren't, that are further behind than you want them to, but you can have some students that can go far beyond your expectations. And I think that's one of the things that teachers really need to focus on because if we give them low expectations, regardless of, if that suits their ability level or not, that's where they're going to perform at. If we, have high expectations, say, oh, I know you can handle this, they're going to be more willing to say, you know what, maybe I can do that. And, whether they really can or not, they're definitely going to try their hardest to, meet that level to understand those complex, ideas and concepts that they need in this, digital design class.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it is like moving forward. I think it is that like pretty important for teachers to like understand that students are gonna like this stuff, so you can almost like push them a little bit further in terms of like the anything that you're learning through technology. So like when you are doing like these different intensified like different programs and things that are real complex and difficult to a digital immigrant, right? You should understand that like, oh, the students really like this, so almost like have higher expectations when it comes to working through technology. So like
Yeah, I
that.
think they're more motivated to do it at that point.
Mhm. Mhm. So
So
I
that
think
definitely plays a role.
yeah. So and then here I think kind of that we're a little talking about that right now. What should an educator's assumptions, or I'm sorry, when should an educator's assumptions be tempered so that students can attempt to do complex learning activities? Um, like when I'm saying like when they should just already know that like when they are dealing with again the technology stuff, to understand that the students are going to enjoy that because that's like what they're getting brought up in right now. They want to be on the phone, computers, and tablets and do all these different things.
I agree. Like, so anytime there's an area of interest that they really enjoy, or obviously like technology, if they're more, sometimes people, like the younger kids know more about technology than we do
Hmm.
sometimes. So,
Hmm.
for us thinking, oh, they're only 8 years old, they can't understand that. We're probably wrong. Half the times they're going to be teaching us, how to do this program or that program with certain technology. So I think, anytime that's involved, teachers should really, temper their assumptions. But I think anytime, is a great time to figure out and, take a step back and say, this is what I think. Is this really true? Because as teachers, we have experience with saying, okay, most of my students at this age level I haven't been able to understand this as well or have trouble with this topic or really go with this topic. So we sort of kind of have a gauge for that.
Hmm.
We should always test it because one year students might be different than another year. It's just because, your year previous to that, students weren't on that level of students. You can really, there's a chance for creativity and innovation and stepping outside the box. I think you should really give students that opportunity to do that and, prove you wrong. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to some of kind of the other readings that we've had previous in the semester, um, about just like yeah, like not being afraid to almost fail. So like you want to check yourself and your entire class of where you stand or what's working for this group and what would work for the next group, and don't be afraid to implement something different. And if it fails, then kind of move on to the next thing. But something you said earlier kind of like sparked my head about how often like you always see a little like nephew or granddaughter or whatever it is, like little someone that's like 5 years old grabs mom or grandma's iPhone or the iPad and is like playing on all these games and downloading all this stuff and is just like running through it, and then our parents are looking at them like, oh, how'd you figure out how to do this, or like how'd you figure out how to do all that stuff. So it's like I just feel like that the adolescents' minds are kind of like are in an era where they're like getting programmed to like know how to use some kind of screen and technology. Like that's just how it is. When if you ask our parents to look something up in a book or whatever, they're like maybe that's like what they're really good at, compared to a kid that can go online and figure how to get like some kind of information pretty quickly. um,
Yeah, I feel like one thing that like younger kids are good with is just like testing stuff out. So this could be a good thing, this could be a bad thing. A lot of the times I don't really necessarily read all the directions. I sort of kind of just like fiddle with it and figure it out on my own. But I think
mhm.
that's like a good, skill builder for younger kids because if you can figure that out when you don't have that, you know, what can't you do? It's really helpful. So I think like this makes me think of like the zone of proximal, development and learning, because there are going to be times where you can push students, to reach that more complex level of understanding with these topics.
Yeah.
And then, whether they can not necessarily reach that by themselves, but if you can scaffold and like help them to get there, then you're still pushing them without, holding back the other students. You could really do that on their own.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's a good thing to have higher expectations and at least see what the students are capable of, for sure.
Okay, so another quote here that we'd like to discuss a little bit is because some students are eager to conform or afraid to fail if they try something different, they start tentatively making a project similar to the one demonstrated in class. First, I think that I understand that quote where they are at first they're trying to copy almost like what they see, but at the same time they're like growing away from that a little bit more and more as they get more comfortable, and especially through the technology, because I guess the technology is is something for the students where they feel almost a little more comfortable, so more students feel comfortable maybe typing up something or doing some kind of new media project compared to standing up in front of the class, because it's not that they get to hide, but I feel like it's just not you don't have to be as confident in something if you're not standing in front of people and doing it. It's if you're doing it through technology, it's okay to mess up because you can do it over again. You know what I mean? It's you're going to have multiple chances to press backspace or to re-record or whatever it is. But it was that quote is interesting. And what are your thoughts of that?
I think just looking at the first part of the quote, that this is a really sad but realistic version of what education is today.
Mm-hmm.
So so many students are afraid to fail no matter what they do. How many students don't raise their hand in class because they're afraid of being wrong?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Even with their peers. Even I right now, after we're educated people, we've gone through many classes and done very well, but I'm still afraid to speak up sometimes because I'm oh, well, what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
But I mean, it shouldn't matter, and that's what we need to teach the students, because obviously failing is a natural part of life. Especially in math, if we conform and think inside the box, we're not becoming the critical problem solvers and thinkers that we essentially want students to be for the workforce, for the real world, and to prepare them for that.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely smart that we try to make it so students bad things everybody does it, and it's it's a way to, for me, making mistakes is the biggest way that I learn, because you improve on them.
Yeah.
So I feel as long as we tell students that that's a stepping stone in the learning process, that's the important thing is to make growth in your learning. So I think like you said, the technology really does help with that.
Yeah, and it's I almost think where now students aren't eager or driven to become great or I mean, I guess you can take this everywhere. Kids in general, I feel sometimes aren't eager to become great, but they're they want to do just enough not to mess up. It's almost too many kids are afraid to take a risk to get that reward. And I see this a lot, obviously in the education, but I can relate it to myself a little bit, in the coaching, world on the lacrosse field. Right now, I know we have a lot of guys that every day come out to practice not to, take a step, one giant step forward, but they're playing almost not to take a step back. And sometimes that holds you
playing
back.
It safe.
Yeah, and playing it safe, and I just feel as technology grows, it'll allow kids in general to, hurdle that kind of that or whatever, go over that speed bump in their life and be able to take that leap, because it's not necessarily you're not there, right? Right. Again, it's like you're not raising your hand in class. You can redo it. And that just like builds confidence a little bit.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's like the go big or go home thing, and I think students, like a lot of it too, is like you feel embarrassed if you do something wrong or if you fail. And like with the grades nowadays, everything's a comparison. You're being judged, or they think they're being judged and compared to their peers. So obviously, they're all like, okay, let me get an A plus because, that's what I should do because other students can do it. So if they, get a D or a C on something, some students feel like they fail, even though that's considered average work.
yeah.
So there's, that negative aspect of education too.
And then, so I'm going to combine these kind of two. Why are students afraid to fail? And then, what can teachers do to avoid creating students that are afraid to fail? Um, if you want to take that, go ahead.
Okay, I think we sort of kind of like already covered it a little bit,
Yeah,
but I think they're afraid to fail just because, they don't want to be embarrassed by their peers,
they don't want to step back,
And
right?
unfortunately, you have those peers that bully and, judge them. So if they get that question wrong, in class one time, they might be bullied for it for the rest of the year. You never know.
Yeah.
But, there's that issue with being embarrassed yourself, being afraid you're going to be judged, being afraid the teacher's going to judge you because half the time, the teachers make those judgments too, unfortunately, and base their expectations based on one thing when that might not always be the case. And I think, that just puts students in a position where they're not willing to step outside the box too far because they don't want to get that bad grade. They don't want to, seem stupid, which a lot of this, like, if I can count the number of times I've heard a kid call themselves stupid, like, that's not the attitude they need to succeed regardless, whether they, are really great or really, not achieving what they want to be, they still call
Hmm.
themselves that, and that's just, going to put them in a position to get nowhere real
Yeah.
fast.
So I think kind of like what teachers can do to avoid that is creating or to avoid creating that particular student that is afraid. They can obviously continue to encourage and continue to implement some kind of technology throughout throughout the process of learning. Again, right, because it, it encourages, technology, I guess, encourages the innovation, because you can do it over, and it just makes a more comfortable, I think, environment for some of the students right now. So are there any kind of lasting remarks that or lessons that, you took away from the article?
I think that what you said about encouraging the students and just like promoting the fact that making mistakes is okay and part of the learning process, I think that's a big thing for them. And like the technology obviously helps because there's that undo button, they can edit stuff, so there's really no mistakes, they can just, fix them or start over. So I think that really helps. But like for the lessons that I took away, I think not being afraid to fail is one big one, and that's for young students all ages in life. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We shouldn't be afraid to do that because sometimes you have to take a risk to end up with a big reward. And I think the fact that influencing and taking the art and creative aspect and mixing it with the STEM technologies and topics is really good, especially with me being a math teacher. I think it's good to mix the two because then you have the students who are more just into the artistic side and then some students who are just into the science and the math, and combining those two is a good outlet for both students, and then they can see that, okay, I sort of kind of do like this too because they influence and work off of each other really well. So I
Yeah,
think that's good.
yeah, and just like what the article is saying, it kind of leads people to paths they never thought they would go down. Getting involved in some of the digital design stuff, allows you to to go down a path for a different job that you thought would never be, part of you, or something like that. So yeah, I liked all the stuff that you came away with, and it's pretty cool that there's things that are expressing how important the digital design is and how much it does relate to those STEM and those core kind of subjects and right, I guess, right in quotes way of thinking, or what everyone thinks is the right or the only way to be thinking. Um,
Yeah, I thought it was really cool how into it all the students were. So
yeah,
like obviously the parents had good reviews. The students, wanted to go
hmm
download it at home so they could do it outside of class. So I think
yeah,
that was a great thing. And the good thing is like they're promoting the STEM majors and like ideas early on. So like for my another one of my online classes I'm taking, which is like the math seminar, we're reading a book about what math has to do with it and how like women and girls are less likely to go into math fields and this and that and like all those reasons. So I think starting the students early, guys, girls doesn't really matter, but having them realize that, oh hey, I sort of kind of do like this topic and I could possibly do that and enjoy that. I think that providing them that understanding or at least a background of what STEM is earlier on, then they have judgment to make those ideas later on when it comes to taking those AP classes, like they said, and maybe majoring in math or bio
hmm
or physics, something like that in college too. So I thought that was really interesting with this article.
yeah, and it's cool that it's pretty neat to see that I believe the program, was free, and all the things that they used were like all the free trials and free downloads, so that like, no matter who you were, you could go home and continue, working on whatever it was. Which I thought that was real cool. Um,
Definitely.
but all right, so I guess we can just move on right into the second article. Of helping students express, and something that I thought that article was awesome. Just explaining that that Adobe, what is it, Adobe Vision, or I'm sorry, Adobe Youth Voices
Youth voice.
program. Yeah, so the Adobe Youth Voices program, I think, can help a lot of people and a lot of schools and students around the country. And it was actually cool because right after I read the article, I sent it to my brother, who's a teacher in South Dakota, who obviously teaches on a Native American reservation, and he obviously teaches with some students that don't want to be in school all the time. And like I think that that program is a great way to get students like re-engaged in learning, and allow them to express themselves in different ways, or like whatever problems they're going through, they could be just like some of the examples that you read throughout that article, about their home life, and but they're not necessarily smart enough, or they don't think they're smart enough to express themselves in writing a novel about what's going on, but like, yeah, they can make a song, or do some kind of video, or whatever it is, and then express themselves that way. So I sent that over to him, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but this is stuff that he's like always looking for, to try to help what's going on out there, because it is a struggle just to have students come back tomorrow for school. Um, but what did you think about the article?
I really liked it. I like how they pinpointed, the quality of education for secondary education specifically, because a lot of the younger students, like up to at least like the younger grades of middle school, I feel like they're really excited to learn. You say, okay, who can help me with this? And everybody in class raises their hand. And then it's like once you hit that like 8th grade mark up, I feel like everything just sort of kind of goes downhill with the motivation of some students. And, they're there because they have to be there or because their parents made them. And they don't really, they're not taking as much out of it because they're not putting in the effort.
Hmm
And I think, the key here with like, engaging or re-engaging the students with the technology is something that can be really helpful because obviously, students like to listen to music, watch music videos, create videos. All that stuff's really interesting to them. Half, their pastime and stuff, their free time, that's what they spend, watching that stuff or listening to it. So I think it's really cool to have those students be able to create their own, type of digital media through this and to, use it to talk about important stuff. So social issues like I think the one was talking about like discrimination and abuse. Like obviously you can get some really big topics out there and share your opinion, so it makes you more confident too. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and it's and their whole concept is pretty great, um, where yeah they are using something the students are already interested in, the technology stuff, um, and it is really great to see those examples of not only does the article say it, but then like you see the quotes and the examples of some of the students, and like they are actually seeing their full potential. The first example they use of the kid that is um, stereotyped as a gang guy, and a stereotype as a guy that's getting in trouble and whatnot, and then he goes off and starts with this program, and now he's doing great things, and he's down a path that he never thought he'd be down, probably years previous. So that whole concept of what they're doing, I think, is pretty awesome, and it's different, which I think is the big part of it as well, where students see something different, and technology. They're like, oh wow, like we don't have to write a paper. Oh cool, I'll do that. So I think that's a big get right there for them. I guess so. I guess we can look at maybe a little bit. It says comment on some of the students from Redwood City and San Jose. Some of those I'm just pulling them up now, but some of those were really cool, and I thought something that was awesome was actually on the bottom lines, like the footer of all of them, of all the pages, kind of said those percentages of like what people, what percent of the kids were engaged in creativity, what percent of the kids wanted to continue their education after their high school, all by getting involved in this program, allowed them to really see their potential. And I thought it was cool not just like to hear that, but to see examples and see results.
Yeah, I like how they talked about like the aha moments that the students had to like
Yeah.
it said to discover their own voices and start to realize their own potential. And I think that's the biggest thing. Students just need to have the confidence in themselves, and by creating something that they look at every day that somebody else makes, that's saying, okay, man, that's awesome. I can't believe I did that. And then in the same way, they're sharing their own ideas and, putting that out there for everybody in the whole world. I think it said they were working with like 45 different countries. And obviously you share that online, and who doesn't get an opportunity to see it? So I think that was really big and motivating for them too. So obviously that's a good catcher for engaging the students, and, being able to create something themselves holds value for them, I think.
Yeah, and it teaches them a good lesson, and something I thought like one of the best quotes was, I've learned to have more dedication to not only my schoolwork or projects, but my life. So I feel like what that means is like he realized that like there's more to it than what he thought originally, or what he or she thought originally. You can express yourself in different ways, and people are gonna listen and they'll understand it, just because it's not in written form or something like that. Some of the other stuff I thought was cool. Obviously, how they were just expressing how they learned to innovate and things like that, and the different students, not only in the United States, but all over the world, are all have these success stories that are pretty cool. And I remember reading one that I thought was really intriguing. I believe it was the kid from England. But I'm just looking through it here.
Like the first one on the page.
Not the first one. I think it was here. I found the one with the deaf kids, right? So kids that are deaf, got to do this.
Oh, that one.
They got to do this great project, and express themselves in a different way, and they were able to interact with each other and still get heard. And they did some videos and did some different stuff, and and I think it was really cool that they were able to actually express themselves in a way that everyone could understand what they were doing, not just like sign language or something like, you know what I mean? Like it was,
Hmm.
they've created something where the whole world could see, what those kids are thinking. I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times like students look at, the there and now instead of like the big picture. And I
Hmm.
think this helps them, see it all really. So, they're doing something really cool that's exciting and engaging and motivating to them, at that time, but at the same time they can start to see their future unfold. Like it's opening the doorways was one of the themes that I mentioned. Like promoting learning, changing lives. So it's changing their lives obviously because it's opening those doors for them because they didn't think that they could really accomplish that to start off with. And then it's also, changing the lives of others by talking about these really important social issues and what they can do with them. So it's raising awareness for that too. So I think it definitely built the, communication skills, the collaboration skills with working with other groups and just being able to express your own ideas to build that confidence. I think that was something that, all students can use and take with them into the future, no matter what they do in their life.
Yeah, and kind of my last remarks are a little bit just like confidence and comfort kind of go hand in hand. So like, if you're comfortable, right, you're going to be able to be confident or become confident. And this program and these different things were putting these students in comfortable situations, so they felt confident in expressing themselves the way that they did, and just you can see again by the stats saying how where they improved in working together, the ability to work as a group. Um, Now they actually believe that they can influence others with their own beliefs, not just like, oh, I'm stupid. No, it's
Mm-hmm.
those kids' thoughts like actually mean something.
How am I gonna
And
matter?
yeah, exactly. So I thought the whole thing was very interesting, and a really awesome concept that I hope continues to grow, because it's just gonna continue to let students grow in a non-traditional way.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how big they are now because I know they said they wanted to expand to be what did it say? They wanted to reach 7,000 more teachers and 150,000 more students by the end of when was this? 2011. So I'm
Yeah,
curious to see how big the program actually is now.
yeah, and
So that'd be something cool to look at.
that would, I'm sure, I would have to imagine this is doubled, because like now with the whole technology thing and being sensitive to everyone's different learning styles and things like that, I think this is probably blowing up. But overall, just very very cool article, and I thought both articles were awesome, and kind of one of my favorites in the recent weeks. Um, but I think that kind of wraps us up here, unless you got anything else you want to add on.
I'm good.
All right, cool. I thought we did a great job, Dr. Sessoms. I hope you enjoy everything you see here. All right, see you later.